In the previous section, we examined the process and requirements for assigning a real estate contract, emphasizing the importance of transparency, consent, and good faith when transferring contractual rights. That lesson underscored how honesty and full disclosure maintain the integrity of real estate transactions. Building on that theme, this final section focuses on an equally critical area, distinguishing between information that must be disclosed and information that is not legally required to be disclosed or included in a contract's terms and conditions. Understanding this distinction helps brokers, sellers, and buyers remain compliant with Arizona law, avoid unnecessary liability, and foster fair dealings throughout the transaction. In Arizona, disclosure obligations arise primarily from statutes, case law, and the commissioner's rules. Sellers and licensees must disclose all known material facts that may affect a property's value or desirability, as established in Hill v. Jones, Arizona Apsus 1986, and Lombardo v. Albu, Aris Apsus 1997. A material fact is any condition or circumstance that could reasonably influence a buyer's decision to purchase, the price they are willing to pay, or the terms they would accept. Material facts may include structural defects, roof leaks, faulty plumbing or electrical systems, foundation cracks, prior water or termite damage, unpermitted additions, zoning violations, or environmental hazards, such as floodplain location or contamination. These must always be disclosed in writing, typically through the seller's property disclosure statement, SPDS. Beyond the SPDS, additional statutory disclosures are required under Arizona law. For example, ARS, Paragraph 33, 422 mandates that sellers of property located outside a subdivision provide an affidavit of disclosure, detailing access, utility availability, water sources, and floodplain status. Likewise, federal law 42 U.S.C. Paragraph 48552 requires disclosure of lead-based paint hazards for homes built before 1978, along with a government-approved pamphlet and signed acknowledgement form. These disclosures are not optional. They are mandated to protect public health, ensure informed consent, and minimize post-closing disputes. However, Arizona law also draws a clear line between information that must be disclosed and information that need not be included in the contract. Non-material facts, or those unrelated to the property's physical or legal condition, generally do not require disclosure. ARS, Paragraph 32, 2156, specifically states that a seller or licensee is not obligated to disclose certain types of information deemed stigmatizing, but unrelated to the property's structure or value. These include the fact that a natural death, suicide, or homicide occurred on the property, that a person with HIV/AIDS or another disease once occupied the property, or that a property was located near a group home, halfway house, or sex offender residence. Although these may concern some buyers, Arizona law classifies them as non-material because they do not physically or legally impair the property. For instance, if a seller knows that a prior occupant passed away in the home, they are not required to disclose this fact unless the buyer directly asks. If asked, the seller or broker may answer truthfully, but are not required by law to volunteer this information. Similarly, a seller does not need to disclose rumors about neighborhood issues, cultural stigmas, or prior ownership by a celebrity. However, if a seller or agent chooses to discuss such matters, their statements must still be truthful. Misrepresentation of any kind can still constitute a violation of good faith and fair dealing. It is also important to differentiate between mandatory disclosures and negotiated terms within a contract. Some items, such as personal property, appliances, furniture, or fixtures, warranties, or service agreements, are not disclosure obligations, but rather optional terms that must be negotiated and written into the contract if the parties want them to be enforceable. For example, if the buyer expects the refrigerator to stay, that expectation must be included in the purchase contract. It is not automatically part of disclosure law. Similarly, the existence of a homeowners association, AHOA, must be disclosed. But payment of HOA fees or transfer costs must be detailed in the contract terms, not in the disclosure section. Licensees must exercise caution to ensure that their clients disclose what is required while maintaining confidentiality and professionalism concerning non-required matters. Under Commissioner's Rule R4-28 1101A and B, real estate licensees must protect and promote their clients' interests, but also deal fairly with all parties. This means they must disclose all known material facts, such as roof leaks, foundation issues, or unrecorded easements, but are not obligated to disclose stigmatizing or irrelevant information. Failing to disclose a material defect can result in disciplinary action or civil liability, while disclosing unnecessary information may violate privacy or stigmatize a property without cause. A practical example illustrates the difference. A Phoenix home seller knows that a prior owner committed suicide in the property and that the home's plumbing system has chronic leaks under the slab. Under Arizona law, the suicide is not required to be disclosed, but the plumbing leaks must be disclosed as a material defect affecting the property's condition. If the seller discloses the suicide but hides the plumbing issue, they would still violate Arizona's disclosure law and the duty of good faith. The reverse, disclosing the plumbing but remaining silent about the suicide, fully complies with the law. Discussion: why are material defects always required to be disclosed in Arizona? Answer: because they directly affect the property's value, safety, or desirability, and non-disclosure would mislead a buyer, violating Arizona's duty of honesty and fair dealing. Why are events like deaths or crimes not legally required to be disclosed? Answer: because they do not physically or legally affect the property's value or use, and are considered stigmatizing factors rather than material defects. What is the distinction between mandatory disclosures and negotiated contract terms? Answer: mandatory disclosures involve facts the law requires sellers to reveal, while negotiated terms cover optional conditions, such as included appliances or warranties, that must be agreed upon and written into the contract. Review summary. The difference between required and non-required disclosures is one of the most important distinctions in Arizona real estate practice. Sellers and licensees must disclose all known material facts affecting a property's value, safety, or condition, including structural, mechanical, or environmental issues. Statutory disclosures, such as lead-based paint or affidavits for rural properties, are mandatory. However, stigmatizing information, such as deaths, crimes, or prior occupancy by persons with certain illnesses, is not required under ARS, paragraph 32, 2156. Brokers and agents must balance legal duty with ethical practice, ensuring that all required disclosures are made while respecting privacy and avoiding unnecessary or misleading statements. By clearly differentiating between what must be disclosed and what may remain confidential, Arizona real estate professionals protect consumers, uphold fairness, and preserve public trust in the industry.